nobody knows you. And the investor, he comes from the same community as you and me, but he gets 20 to 40 new business pitch decks in a day. So his mind is crowded, his attention span is.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today it is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce you all to this particular session where we are going to know more about the steps required for sustainable startup growth. My name is Harsh and I'm going to moderate this session for all of you, wherein I'm going to introduce you all about the event and perhaps the person who is going to interact and address all of us. First of all, I request you to kindly acknowledge and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest, and he is very dynamic, very interesting, and very bold personality, none other than Mr. Tushar Kansal, who is here with us. I would like to request all the persons, those who are watching this session on YouTube, to kindly upload in the comment section and welcome the presence of our esteemed guest. Mr. Tushar Kansal currently holds the position of Chief Executive Officer at his own financial advisory firm called Consultancy Venture, with executive education from Harvard Business School and MBA in finance at University of Delhi and Engineering. He has handled responsibilities at Deloitte, Times of India's Brand Capital, MTS India, and as CFO of Guggenheim on company DLI. He also used to write for Business World, Business and Economy, Digital Market Asia, and I believe his profile has so many things, so many glories, which I won't be able to explain in a few minutes. But I'm pretty sure during this conversation we are going to learn a lot from him. So first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I have been seeing your work and your sessions. You try to bring out so much of experience and knowledge from such wide variety of guests, and so it is my pleasure to be on your show today.
It's our pleasure too. So, sir, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is developing a vision for sustainable startup growth. Sir, my first question to you is how actually is the old way of raising early money different from the today's ways of raising money?
So, if you when I had graduated from my MBA, and that time was the dot-com boom was going on. Prior to that, raising money was not a very fancy thing. One used to go to rich people, ask for money to open a business, and on some profit sharing, the money was raised. And if you go really long time back, as to the advent of capitalism. At that time, initially in the Dutch, people used to own ships, and not many ships used to come back. So they used to lose money. So they devised crowdfunding, and they said that let us all own all these ships so that there is a portfolio approach. You will lose some ships, but the other ships will make a lot of money. So, and whenever you raise money, you raise capital, it is called risk capital. You are taking a risk. Equity means risk. So, the main revolution which came in the modern way of raising money, it came with the advent of a corporate whale. What does a corporate whale mean? It means that the company, the private limited partnership, or the company is a separate identity than the owner of the company. So it means that if the company doesn't do well, it goes down, then the founders of the company are protected. Their personal assets won't be taken away by the bank or the or the investor. So, this particular corporate whale, it improved the way we raised money, and a lot of people started taking a lot of risks by opening up private limited companies, public companies, and a lot of people putting in money in that way. And that's how things have changed. And now, if you are studying in a Ivy League college in US, UK, or anywhere, you just explain your business on a piece of napkin in a coffee shop to an investor, he will write you a check. And things have become so easy. People are punting on new business models, and it's so much more easier to raise money as compared to previous times.
All right, sir. I think you have very beautifully explained, and I think it's a kind of privilege today we got to hear all these things from you. Sir, my
My
next
pleasure.
question to you is what is bridge financing?
Bridge financing is, suppose you raise some money in your company, and then the next round of money you want to raise is 1 year ahead. And because of the cash burn which is happening in the company, you require to raise some money in between. So that money, typically for less than 1 year tenor and at high interest rate, that is called a loan bridge. So it's a short term loan. It's called bridge financing. Similarly, if you are coming out with an IPO of your company, and there is some time, the markets are not doing well, you are not getting the right valuation, so the promoters say we have to wait for the market to improve. So you loan your unlisted shares to an investment bank. He underwrites the issue, and he provides you some money. So that is equity bridge. It's If it is on IPO, then it's called IPO bridge. If it is loan against shares and startup, it is called equity bridge. And bridge financing also includes use of convertible instruments like convertible preference shares, convertible debentures. So these are instruments which are sometimes in a short term to raise money. And there is also differential voting right shares, DVRs. So all these instruments are there to raise bridge financing.
All right, sir. Sir, my next question to you is how do investors go after a small idea with a bigger growth strategy rather than a big idea with a small growth strategy?
So, big ideas are dreamt by people who feel they have a lot of power. So, they are called ego projects, they are called vanity projects. So, right now, the biggest building in the world is Burj Khalifa. And when Dubai was constructing the world's tallest building, Burj Khalifa, by the end of it, they were short of cash. So, so it was a very funny situation. They had to talk to the king of UAE, and the king said, "Okay, I will bail you out, but the building has to be in my name." That's why the building is named Burj Khalifa. And then big projects like Abdul Nasser built the dam on the Nile River. So Nile used to flood a lot, and he said, "I'll build such a big dam with Russia's help." And he built the dam, and the whole ecology of the area got affected. And the crop production, instead of going up, started going down. Similarly, Chinese, they want to urbanize their country, so they built cities right in the big cities, right in the middle of villages. And the village people are used to their lifestyle, so they have been living that since hundreds, thousands of years. So there are many ghost cities in China. So these are all big ideas. In the corporate side, I'll give you an example of a big idea with a small growth strategy which went bad. You would have heard of WeWork co-working space. Now, Adam Newman, he said that we have a very formal atmosphere in offices, formal clothes, formal way of talking to each other, formal cubicles. He said the future of office will be informal, and there will be communities who will play with each other, eat with each other, and that That's why he imagined, it's a big idea, that's why he imagined WeWork. But look at the business side, how he failed. He took properties in prime locations on long-term lease, 3 years, 6 years, 9 years. He made 5-star to 7-star infrastructure, and he gave it to gig economy, those people who are freelancers, who are sometimes in the job, sometimes out of job. So you are spending on prime property, you are making 5-star, 7-star infrastructure, but your customer is somebody who can barely pay you. And that is why WeWork debacle happened. The IPO got bombed at stock exchange. The IPO never happened. Instead of $47 billion valuation, at the IPO the company was getting $8 billion valuation. And that's a classic example of big ideas going bad. Now look at smaller ideas. Mr. Khan of Khan Academy, he wanted to teach his relatives. So he created, he used to teach them. The relatives said, "You don't teach well." So he said, "Okay, I will create 10-minute videos." When he created these 10-minute videos and he uploaded on the website, they became such a hit, got so much of traffic, that he started uploading all the content in short videos. And it became so big that Bill Gates called him, gave him a huge donation, I think $100 million. And that's how a small idea became big. I mean, you talk about Slack is the office automation software communication tool. Or you talk about Twitter. So when somebody goes to opens an account in Twitter, now look at the growth strategy. Initially it asks your interests, and then it shows you some profiles, some handles, and then you follow them. Immediately your home page, it gets populated and you started getting interested. So that is how a small idea with a big growth strategy succeeds. Like LinkedIn, if you go on LinkedIn, it used to ask your Gmail ID and password, and it used to send mailers to all your contacts, and it used to tell you which of your contacts are on LinkedIn. So immediately that community was formed. So these are all examples of how small is beautiful. There is a book, Small is Beautiful, and that's how the world works.
Indeed, sir. Again, you have very beautifully explained and taking the different examples of like Burj Khalifa, Khan Academy, and Slack. I again have to say that it's a kind of privilege today. We got to hear all those things from you, sir. My next question to you, which is common in when I was collecting the question for this session, the question which I faced, which is very common in all the platform. Actually, the question is. What are the best practices to connect with investors? I think, sir, you are the best person to answer this question.
So you are, see, nobody, suppose you have created a new business idea, you are working on to create some new business, nobody knows you. And the investor, he comes from the same community as you and me, but he gets 20 to 40 new business pitch decks in a day. So his mind is crowded, his attention span is small. There is a study which says that investor spends on an average 90 seconds on a pitch deck. So you have to grab his attention. So apart from grabbing his attention, you also have to meet certain hygiene factors. Like nowadays, if you Google something, people search only for the first 10 sites or the first 20 sites, not more than that. So you should have some blogs as to what you are doing. You should have some videos. Anybody searches your name, your company's name, he should get a very fair sense of what you are as a person, what is your dream, what is it you are creating. And these are very simple things nowadays. Medium, the blog, these are all very easy to create. The videos are easy to create. We are living in a TikTok generation, which is a nano influencer generation. So first thing is have a good internet presence. Second thing, make a good business plan and a financial model. And after WeWork markets, the investors are very, very particular that the unit economics, the company should not be burning cash and losing money in the process of growth. So you should be profitable on each unit you sell. So that unit economics should be on your side. Then you should be solving a problem which affects human beings, like Uber. If anybody staying in India, I remember it was very difficult to find a taxi. You had to go to a taxi stand, convince the driver, wake him up, tell him we have to take a taxi. So Uber solved a major problem in a very simple way, by the stickiness of the smartphone. Then since you are raising money, so have a presence on AngelList. On your LinkedIn profile should be quite good. You can make use of incubators and accelerators if you are too early in the game. Then one very important thing is read the investment thesis of the investor before approaching him, because his attention span is less. It's always good to know what is the investor wanting. And the best way to reach out to the investor is through the founders of the investee company. They can refer you and you can reach out to them. Otherwise, if you are cold calling, then don't send a normal LinkedIn request. Send a personalized LinkedIn request with 5 lines about yourself. And attend events, ask them questions, share your visiting cards. And I feel the best business is one which the founder can explain in simple words in 10 to 15 minutes. So keep it simple. It's KIS. Keep it simple.
Again, sir, it was quite insightful answer from your side. Sir, my next question to you is, and I think you are the best person to answer this question. How to read a startup term sheet?
A startup term sheet is basically a document which lays down the conditions, the terms, and everything which the investor is uh, which the investor is the way the investor is putting money in your company. First part is whether it's a binding or a non-binding term sheet. Binding means that the investor cannot walk away from the deal after signing the term sheet. Maybe the valuation changes after due diligence findings, but non-binding means the investor can walk away even on the last day. Then the company valuation at which the investor is putting in money, the amount of money he's putting in, the instrument, is he making use of a preference share or debenture, what are the rights which the investor has, like anti-dilution right means that whatever valuation at which the investor is coming in, and later on you bring a new investor at a lower valuation, so some extra shares will be issued to the first investor to compensate him for the loss in valuation. Then whether there are ESOPs, employee stock option plans, in that particular for the employees. These are shares given to the employees by startups because they can't pay market salaries in many cases. Then there are some conditions precedent and conditions subsequent. Precedent would mean that whatever information you have shared with the investor is true, and subsequent conditions mean that you will do all the statutory filings, regulatory filings, compliances, so that the deal closure happens properly. Then the composition of board of directors. Does the investor have observer rights, or does he have a seat on the board? What are the voting rights the investor has on the board? Then info rights, that the company has to supply information monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually to the investor on its financials, on what is going on in the company. Then there are some reserved matters. Reserved matters means that on many things, decisions of the company has to keep the investor in loop, like selling an asset, buying an asset, appointing a costly CXO, or opening a subsidiary, any of these kind of matters.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. And I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, they will learn many things from it. And not only I think, but I do strongly believe this. Sir, my next question to you is how to understand critical elements like liquidation, preferences, the option pool, and the board seats.
Liquidation preference basically means that sometimes you give the investor a sweetener. The sweetener is we have issued you shares and we have also issued you preference shares. Tomorrow, when a new investor is coming, some liquidity event is happening, then suppose I tell the investor, on your preference shares, I will give you double return. On your normal shares, I will give you normal return. So you are just giving him better return and more benefit so that he puts in the money. And options pool is employee stock options. So these are shares in the company which get converted in a vesting period of 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. And board seats is how many seats the investor has on the board of directors. It is very critical because having seats on the board means that you are privy to the happenings in the board of directors, and you also are part of the voting rights, so you also have a control over that particular process of decision making. So these things are very important. Usually, ESOP pool, when we talk about, it's around 15 to 25% of equity, mostly from the founders, is issued as ESOPs to employees at a certain valuation. Then there are some drag along, tag along clauses, right of first refusal clauses. Drag along clause means that if the investor is finding a new investor for suppose 51% equity in the company, and the investor has 25%, so the investor can drag 26% of founder shares, make it 51%, and then sell the 51%. Tag along means if the founder is selling his equity to a new investor, so the first investor has a right to tag along his shares and sell his shares also in that deal. Right of first refusal means that whatever the next funding round will happen in the company, the original investor will get the first right to buy the new shares in the new round in the company. He'll have the first right at the same valuation at which the new investor is coming, or maybe some discount on that. So these are some part of the term sheet. These particular critical elements like liquidation, options, and board seats.
All right, sir. Again, it was really a very wonderful, insightful answer from your side. I must say there is a lot to learn from you, but today we are short of time. So, moving to my last question of this session, sir, the actually question is two terms are quite prominent in startups ecosystem: sustainability and growth. How do you investors look at these?
Sustainable means that what happens is if you are growing very fast, then you are definitely causing some harm to the environment and to the future generations. Sustainable economic growth means a rate of growth which can be maintained without creating other significant economic problems, especially for future generations. And there is a clearly a trade-off between rapid economic growth today and growth in the future. Growth exposes and create environmental problems for future generations, including the depletion of oil, global warming, and stuff like that. So there is always a trade-off between sustainable growth, sustainability, and growth. And nowadays, the in the market is that the company should be growing sustainably. It should be not be impacting the environment, the society, and it should be growing in a way that protects the environment also for future generations. Like electricity is free for farmers in India in many states, so they make use of tube wells, and they use groundwater because the water table keeps on going down. Now that is non-sustainable. But if suppose there is a state near seawater, and there is a desalination plant which uses seawater, makes it pure water, and then that is used for agriculture. So this would mean a sustainable way of growing. So the growth has to be sustainable in today's uh, environment, where every stakeholder of the company is very conscious about these things, about women empowerment, about diversity in teams, about environment, about culture.
Indeed, sir. I think it was a quite a strong message from your side, and I must say this is the healthy discussion with you or the topic. We look forward to conduct more session with you in future. Thank you so much, sir, for joining and giving your important time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today here. I, really liked talking to you and discussing all these aspects.
Same here, sir. Thank you so much.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside, I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside, I'm alone.